All right, so now let's go ahead and do our most common letter problem over here. Right, and actually I'm going to go, so let's go ahead and look at our most common letter problem, right? I'm going to go ahead and comment this out, or rather I'm going to turn it into a string, which has the effect of commenting it out, because Python goes and looks at this and says, that's a string literal, and you're not storing it anywhere. Okay, so def, most common letter in our text over here. Great. So what is the most common letter in the text? So again, all I have to do here is say I'm going to create a dictionary, and I'm going to call it the same thing, sightings. Okay. So, or actually, I'll give it a better name, letter counts, because this is going to count our letters for us. Remember, I said that dictionaries are awesome at these three things, one of which is counting, and that's going to be the majority of what we use. So, letter counts. What do we need to do? We will count them, obviously. Axiomatic statement is axiomatic, Andrew. Okay, so for letter in text, what we're going to do is that I'm going to first make sure letter is lowercase. So letter is equal to letter dot lower. Okay, and then I want to make sure it's actually a letter, because actually technically everything's a character in text, and this has spaces and commas and whatnot. So let's go ahead and just check something in idle, because remember from last time we had the whole you can do this in Python. You can do this in Python, right? Check if 3 is less than another number, which is less than another number, right? And that will tell you true. That's perfectly fine, right? And if I did 3 is less than 2, 3 is less than 1, which is less than 10, it's going to give me false. It's great. Can I do this? A is less than Z. That makes sense. Awesome. Great. So that works, right? A is less than. It comes before Z. Okay? So I could totally say, hey, so let's go ahead and use that to our advantage here. Use both of those clauses together. If A Z, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, is the letter between A and Z, is it A through Z? Is this in A through Z, right? So if it's, because otherwise I want to ignore it, right? No need for an else statement. I'm just not going to write anything. So in that case, I got to make a determination, right? I want to put it in our dictionary. So here's the thing I need to do. First, I want to ask, have I seen this letter? Because our dictionary is initially empty. I could populate our dictionary. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. And since we know we're working with letters, we're going to go ahead and do this beforehand. And that might actually mean, so for I in range, again, what we're going to do is the letters, we're going to go ahead and do the alphabetic letters. So for letter in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z, right? So I did, in fact, go to preschool. For each of those letters, letter counts is equal to what we're going to say is that the letter count of that letter is equal to 0, right? We've seen it 0 times so far in the text. Now, the reason I'm doing it this way to begin with is because I feel like this is less complex for starting, and then I'm going to move up to complexity. So for letter, if it's in the letters, great. So we're going to initialize each of the letters and say we've seen each of these letters 0 times. And so now we're going to say for letter in text, make it lowercase, and if it's actually a letter, right? If it's something from A to Z, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say letter counts of that letter, right? The number of times I've seen that letter is equal to the number of times I've seen that letter. So the number of times I've seen that letter is equal to the number of times I've seen that letter plus 1, because I've seen it one more time. So let's go ahead and now, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to print D, and I'm going to return the letter, sorry, I'm going to print the letter counts. Actually, I'll go ahead and return it since I'm already printing whatever I return. So return letter counts, and we can see what happens here, which is pretty awesome. We just run it, and nothing happens because I commented it out. Awesome job. And we see that we have all the letters here, but we see W appears once, world. We have hello world, and it turns out there's 21 O's. Right? So this actually gets us most of the way there. That's awesome, right? And now we can say, okay. And now what we can do is that we can look for the, well, it takes a bit more. There's code we could do to find, like that you could look up that does this a bit more, but I want to do it manually. Okay? I don't want to use magic and stuff that you don't know necessarily, and because it's less stuff to memorize, and it's good to understand the fundamentals here. So we now need the most common letter. But basically we were saying, hey, if it's a letter, get the number of times you've seen it, add 1 to it, and now update that count. So now we can say for letter in letter counts, right? So letter counts, right? That's the keys. So this is for each letter. We can say most common letter is equal to, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a tuple, because, yeah, actually this seems a lot easier to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to instead say for pair in, or sorry, for letter, comma, count in letter counts. Okay, so most common, and I'm going to create that as a pair. And what I'm going to say is that I've seen the empty string, and this pair is going to be basically the most common thing. I've seen this thing negative gajillion times. Scientific term. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is say for letter counts dot items. That allows me to get both of those, right? The letter and the count. This gives me the key and the value, right? So for each letter, I can say, hey, if count is greater than most common, and a tuple works just like a list. So this is index 0, index 1. So I'm going to say 1 here, right? Because I want to be able to store them together. It makes it easier. That way I don't have to write 2 variables. So most common. So this gives me the letters over here. So it gives me the number of times I've seen it. If I've seen it more than the most common letter, then most common becomes this, and to create a tuple, it's just like creating a list. Over here, in fact, we could do a list. Yeah, let's just do a list to make it more comfortable. Most common, we're going to just replace it, the tuple, with a list, no problem there. And we're going to say, hey, just replace it with this new list, which is the letter and the count together. So this gives me the letter, this gives me the count. Great. So if I've seen this more times than that, awesome, great. And then all I will do at the end is I'm going to return most common index 0, because that gets me the actual letter, because I'm asking for what the most common letter is, which is O, which we saw 24 times, right? So the code is actually a lot cleaner, in my opinion. Now, but that doesn't help me with like the original problem, with the original complication to the problem I had. But let's go ahead and try this off of actual text. Let's go with sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. And to copy the whole thing, I'm just going to do that with a triple quote and a triple quote. And there we go. And let's go ahead and see what the most common character in there is. And it's E, which isn't, oh, sorry, that's the most common letter. Now, how would I get the most common character, though? That's another story entirely. Like, for instance, what if I wanted to, as I was mentioning earlier, wanted to analyze, say, this Japanese text over here. Spring 2020. Spring 2020. So, Japanese. So, say I wanted to, so this is a much larger file. Okay, much larger text. Right, and what is it? It is John Mead Faulkner's The Nebulae Cult. I just simply looked for Gutenberg Japanese, so this is the first thing I grabbed, so I have no idea what it is. I really don't have any idea, so hopefully it's not anything terrible. But text-wise, it's exactly what we need. Because if I want to find out what the most common character in this Japanese text was, or the most common glyph, I should say, in this Japanese text, that's going to be an interesting task. So, and it's going to require, and that means also we can't initialize our most common letter the same way we did. So let's go ahead and do that in the next video.